Thank you for joining me for another UnleashingFreedom.com podcast. This is Richard Wells.
We've all heard it said that there's no such thing as an overnight success, but I'd beg to differ. The day before the NBA draft, you'll find a broke college student, but just one day later, that same broke kid is now a multi-millionaire. Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Israel in the Bible who was sold into slavery by his brothers, was Pharaoh's prisoner one day, and the next he was the second most powerful person in all of Egypt. One day the United States of America was struggling for survival in the Revolutionary War. Days later, the British were surrendering at Yorktown, Virginia, and a formerly frustrated George Washington finally had a decisive victory that effectively ended the war. Now hang on, you might be saying, these aren't overnight successes. There's a story behind each of those successes that culminated in these single events. Yes, I'd agree that there is a story, but the story ends in an overnight success. A success that could only come after a persistent effort. The challenge is that most people give up in frustration before they get a chance to arrive at that defining moment. The moment when it all comes together in a single event where hard work, dedication, faith, courage, and more are all on display for someone like an NBA scout or an impressed Pharaoh to see. The years put in to become the person who shines in that moment is truly what matters. The Battle of Yorktown was one such event. Washington had endured over 6 years of war, suffering through winter campaigns where death, misery, and suffering surrounded him on all sides. In frustration, he persevered through these catastrophes, knowing that his fellow countrymen, out of political weakness or greed or posturing, all failed to come up with adequate supplies to even support his troops. Often, he relied on his connections with entrepreneurial-minded acquaintances to come up with solutions to keep the troops in business. Beyond this, he dealt with infighting and posturing among other military leaders, an untrained and inexperienced army, and even treacherous treason by high-ranking officers. The list is long and deep, and a lesser person would have thrown in the towel at any number of crossroads in the war, but not Washington. He saw the victory. He could taste it, and he felt the cause of creating a significant free people coursing through his veins. So he pressed on, and he stayed in the fight long enough to experience that defining, quote, overnight successful moment that produces incredible results. While not nearly as significant, I recall my own overnight success in my second month working in sales for a patriotic cause. Much to the dismay of my family and friends, I had left a very good corporate career to take on the challenge, and I was in a stretch of 44 straight sales presentations without making a single sale. Fighting off doubt and frustration, I went out the next morning and got a no, followed by another no. But on presentation number 47, I found a patriot, and I got a yes. And same thing happened with presentation number 48. The drought had ended, and the next week I went out and had a blow-up week and took my place among the top performers in the nationwide organization. Now, I hate to think what would have happened if I would have looked at my wife that night with 44 no's in hand and said, I just don't think I've got what it takes. I don't think I could do this. Yeah, I'd better go back to doing what I know I can do. Now, if that had been the case, I wouldn't have received the organization's champion award later that year, nor would I have met thousands of amazing patriots I've been able to associate with. And I certainly would not be recording this podcast. Remember, water is still water at 211 degrees. But just 1 degree more, and it changes its state, and intense energy releases it into the atmosphere as steam. Now, how close are you to your